Good morning, everyone, and welcome to SIO's webinar, Beyond Conventional Cancer Therapies. Our program will start in approximately 3 minutes. Thank you very much for attending.
Hello, and welcome to Society for Integrative Oncology's webinar presentation, Beyond Conventional Cancer Therapies, an online resource for integrative cancer. SIO is pleased to offer today's webinar as part of its hour-long educational webinars for Society members and guests. These events are free for SIO members who can also view past webinars on our members page. If you have to leave the webinar early, a recording of it will be available to members within a week of today's presentation. If you have any difficulty accessing today's webinar, please send an email to info@integrativeonc.org. We will have a brief Q&A immediately following today's presentations, so please submit your questions and we will do our best to answer them all. Those questions that we don't have time to get to, please send to info@integrativeonc.org with the subject line webinar, and responses will be emailed to all attendees as a follow-up document. My name is Marianne Cerrone, and I'm honored to introduce our presenters today. They are truly leaders and pioneers in the field of integrative oncology. First, I'd like to introduce Michael Lerner, PhD, president and co-founder of Commonweal, a 44-year-old nonprofit center in Bolinas, California, and Commonweal's Cancer Help Program, Healing Circles, and Beyond Conventional Cancer Therapies. We also have Nancy Hepp, MS, who serves as the BCCT project manager. She researches, writes, and edits the BCCT web pages, as well as overseeing the technology issues. And I'd also like to welcome Laura Poole, RN, MSN, who's a senior researcher for BCCT. Laura is an oncology clinical nurse specialist who's been providing integrative oncology clinical care, navigation, consultation, and education services for over 30 years. So now we'll begin today's presentation with Michael Lerner.
Greetings. It's a great joy to be here for this important SIO webinar, and we're honored to do it. SIO has been guided with great distinction by many of our friends and colleagues in the field. The purpose of Beyond Conventional Cancer Therapies is to contribute an evidence-based approach to integrative cancer care for patients, clinicians, and other health professionals, as well as family members, patient advocates, navigators, and researchers. But our principal focus is on patients to approach these issues from a truly patient-centered perspective. What differentiates Beyond Conventional Cancer Therapies from many other websites is, first of all, we have no axe to grind for or against any therapy. Second, no one pays us, nor are we beholden to any interest. Third, we seek to balance between conservative sites and sites that are operated by proponents of different therapies. We seek to come right down the middle. Fourth, we are evidence-based, and our summaries of different therapies change with emerging evidence. Fifth, this is a complex field, and we seek to be user accessible, but without sacrificing accuracy. BCCT offers evidence-based reviews of over 86 integrative cancer therapies, including natural products, mind-body therapies, diets and metabolic therapies, body-based therapies, energy therapies, and more. Extended reports on integrative approaches to major cancers, starting with breast, prostate, and ovarian cancers, and soon to include colon, lung, and brain cancer. We also have a quite novel focus on off-label or repurposed drugs, which is generally absent from other integrative cancer websites. Finally, we recognize that often the most fateful decision in true integrative cancer care are among mainstream therapies, decisions often made without adequate patient information. A principal focus of BCCT is what we call our 7 healing practices. And you can see the slide there of what the 7 practices, well, you don't see them, but Nancy, can you read those to us, because if you can be unmuted, because I don't have my full list here.
Yes, the 7 healing practices include eating well, moving more, managing stress, sleeping well, creating a healing environment, sharing love and support, and exploring what matters now.
Now, we know from extensive pharmaceutical research that quality of life or functional status is a strong contributor to health outcomes. Since this is true, it stands to reason that these 7 healing practices contribute greatly to quality of life and functional status, and therefore to better outcomes with standard and experimental therapies. In other words, if you are healthier, you have a better chance of doing well with conventional therapies, and therefore that alone may certainly improves quality of life and may extend life as well. Our advisory board consists of national and international leaders in the field. Leaders like Donald Abrams, Keith Block, Andrew Weil, Dean Ornish, Mark Renneker, Dwight McKee, Lisa Altschuler, and others. And many of our advisors have led the Society for Integrative Oncology. My own background is that I taught at Yale in the early 1970s. I founded Commonweal in 1976. The Commonweal is a health and environmental research center that has 25 different programs, including some national and international in scope. I have co-led 206 week-long retreats for cancer patients over the past 33 years. And my book, Choices in Healing, Integrating the Best of Conventional and Complementary Cancer Therapies from MIT Press, was the first to be taken seriously by the mainstream medical community 25 years ago. And it's really interesting to compare where we were in integrative oncology and integrative cancer therapies 25 years ago, when generally they were all dismissed as quackery. And 25 years later, we now have integrative cancer programs at many major NCI accredited cancer centers. Now our work at Commonweal in Cancer also includes Healing Circles, which is a global network devoted to best practices in healing circle work, and Beyond Conventional Cancer Therapies, which we're discussing today. My partner and BCCT co-founder, Lucy Waletsky, MD, and I have a lifelong commitment to this work. The work has been funded for the past 2 years, and we have funding for the next 4 years. And Dr. Waletsky is also on the board of Memorial Sloan Kettering, which was founded by her grandfather, and her father devoted his life to this work. So with that, I just want to emphasize that our goal is to be one of the sources on the web for the best, most objective, most evidence-based integrative cancer information for patients and health professionals. And we're honored to be on this SIO webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. My name is Nancy Hepp, and as Marianne mentioned, I'm the project manager, and I will be leading you through a short summary of where we get our information from and how we organize it so that it's of use to our users. And then Laura will take us on a grand tour of the website. I want first to be sure that we are clear on the different approaches to cancer care. Alternative approaches are used instead of conventional treatments. So conventional treatments are excluded with alternative approaches, whereas complementary approaches are used in addition to conventional treatments. The very same therapy, whether it's meditation or acupuncture or a natural therapy or other, can be either alternative or complementary, depending on whether it's used with or without conventional treatments. Integrative cancer care goes beyond complementary approaches in that patients and their treatment teams work together to find the best blend of conventional and complementary therapies that are effective and safe and backed up by evidence, whether it's evidence from the research literature or the evidence of watching and observing and evaluating what is happening with that patient over time. Our summaries are based on a wide range of evidence, and we just summarized them here. Clinical practice guidelines are created by medical societies or professional organizations after a thorough review of evidence by experts. These indicate the best practices according to the knowledge at the time. The Society for Integrative Oncology clinical practice guidelines are featured on our site, but we also draw from other guidelines. We look deeply in the peer-reviewed journal articles, and we focus on the reviews and meta-analyses where those are available. We look at books, especially the programs and protocols from our advisors and other authoritative authors. We go to government and agency sites and their reports. We draw from the Knowledge in Naturopathic Oncology website known as Know Oncology. This is a clinical and educational tool that combines summaries of up-to-date research in integrative oncology with current best practices from experienced naturopathic physicians. So we draw from that. We look at websites and reports from professional organizations. And we do follow news reports and videos and interviews. We have a news feed on our site where we promote news reports. We use these as a guide to go look for the science and the research behind something, but we do follow the popular media. When we organize our summaries, we try to make an overwhelming amount of material digestible for people. So for each of our therapy summaries, we separate the effects of that therapy into 3 areas: treating the cancer, managing side effects and promoting wellness, and reducing risk. Treating the cancer includes survival and also anything that impacts growth and the progression of tumors or cancer. It would include processes such as angiogenesis, which is the creation of new blood vessels to supply tumors, and other internal processes like inflammation, the activity of natural killer cells, and many, many other processes that either support and promote or inhibit cancer growth. Treating the cancer also would include effects on metastasis. Managing side effects and promoting wellness is all of those things that aren't directly treating the cancer, but that have a big impact on the patient's health and wellness and quality of life. And then reducing risk addresses both reducing risk of developing cancer or of recurrence. A therapy may rate differently in each of these areas. If someone were to ask me, does this therapy work? I'd have to ask, what are you wanting it to do? Do you want to know, does it treat the cancer? Does it manage side effects? Or does it reduce risk? And so something may do very well in one of these areas and not so well in one of the others. We also list cautions, as far as we know them, regarding interactions with other therapies, with conventional treatments. We look at populations who should not be using something because of other medical conditions, and so on. So we try to be balanced and produce or promote all of the information that we have available. Within these areas, we separate out clinical and preclinical evidence. Clinical evidence being which involves human patients, and preclinical evidence involves cells, tissues, or animals, which are good indicators of effect, but not as strong as clinical evidence in showing how it will behave in real patients. When we summarize a cancer type as opposed to a specific therapy, we begin by giving the clinical practice guidelines that are available. We give examples of integrative approaches that have been used and published and show effect. And then again, when we present all of the integrative approaches that are available for this cancer type, we separate them into treating the cancer, managing side effects and promoting wellness, and reducing risk. Because for many cancer types, there are many natural products and ANCAs, those off-label, overlooked, or novel cancer approaches, we separate those and group them by levels of evidence. The first two levels indicate that there is good clinical evidence of efficacy and safety. And with the first group, there's easy access. You can generally buy this at a store or online. With the second group, there's limited access, either because a prescription is required or because the therapy may not be widely available everywhere. There might be legal restrictions on it. It might be regulated. It just might not be available. We have two levels of limited clinical evidence. In the group 3, there is good safety behind something, and it's used in leading integrative programs. In the fourth category, there may be significant cautions, and this is often true with those ANCAs, those off-label drugs, in which you really need medical supervision to look for side effects and interactions. But we believe that there is the potential for significant benefit. A fifth category is therapies that have especially promising preclinical or emerging clinical evidence, but they're not quite ready for prime time. And then a sixth category is evidence of no efficacy, or it may be dangerous. So in other words, a therapy has been studied in this cancer type, and there has been no effect found to date. So that is a summary of how we get our information and how we present it for our users. And now I will hand over the presentation to my colleague Laura Poole, who will take you on a tour.
Thank you, Nancy. Okay, let's get my screen up here. And I'm going to make sure you don't see all the pop-ups that come. Okay, here we go. So thank you, Nancy, and thank you to SIO for asking us to do this presentation. What I'm going to do in the next few minutes is navigate the BCCT site with you so you can help yourself or your patients navigate integrative cancer care. Jesse Grauman, who is president and founder of the Center for Advancing Health, was diagnosed with 4 different kinds of cancer. Each time the feeling was the same, that she was dropped into a foreign territory without a compass, a map, or a translator, and all she wanted to do was find her way home. So let's go to the BCCT homepage so that you can begin to see how you might use BCCT as a compass, as a map, and to provide some translation in that territory of integrative cancer care. So let me say, if you are in front of your computer or a smartphone, you may want to go ahead and pull up the pages that I'm pulling up so you can actually begin to navigate the site yourself along with me. And I really strongly urge you sometime after the presentation to just go and play around in the site so that you know where information is, and then you can share it with others. And show them where it is. So when you come to the home page of BCCT, this page is really about linking in with particularly people who might be new in the cancer experience or they have just been diagnosed with a recurrence. So we focus on lots of the things that would help people get started. And here you can see some of the things that we think people might want to know about here. So that's our home page. And while we're here, I'm going to start looking at the navigation bar. And I won't focus on everything, but I will focus on some of the key points. I do want to mention that if you click on the join button and you join, we won't charge you anything. We won't be sending you all sorts of communications, but we do keep track of people who come to the site and just get an idea of who's using it. And in exchange, you will have free access to Rebecca Katz's Cancer Fighting Kitchen course, which is online. And you may know Rebecca Katz as the wonderful cookbook author of The Cancer Fighting Kitchen. Okay, let's take a look at some other drop downs here. So we have this where to begin bar, which is a good place for most people to start if they're unfamiliar with the territory of integrative cancer care or cancer or the website. We have this bar here, which contains many, many topics related to integrative cancer care. We have search therapies, which I'm going to come back to and spend a little time with you. We have cancer and side effects. So one way you can find your information about your cancer is to come here and click on your cancer type. And as Michael said, we have built out the breast cancer, prostate cancer, and ovarian cancer summaries. And soon we'll have lung, colorectal, and brain cancer, hopefully by the end of the summer. But we do provide at least some information on every cancer and point people to resources and where they can find other information. Also, if someone's dealing with a particular side effect or symptom, they can find it here under side effects and symptoms. We also have news, blog, resources, stories here, and I strongly encourage you to spend time looking at our resources. We add to them almost on a daily basis, and we hope you'll look at that area a bit more. Now I'm going to come back to search therapies. First, I'll say you can search for anything on the site here with this magnifying glass. But if you don't know the name of something, that might be a little difficult to do. So if you come here under Search Therapies and go to Search Therapy Summaries, right now I did a search for curcumin. I'm going to make it a general search. So this way you will see all the therapies that we've summarized, starting with the healing practices. And then we have the other therapies grouped under categories such as natural products, diet and metabolic therapies, exercise and movement therapies, biologic treatments, the ONCAs, energy therapies, and so forth and so on. So someone may want to just browse and look and click. You can also search by your cancer and put that in, and it'll pull up all the therapies that have targeted that cancer. Or you may want to search for a specific product, natural product. So let's do curcumin. It will pull up all the summaries that have tagged curcumin in it. But let's just look at curcumin specifically. All of our therapy summaries are organized similarly to this. You could, if you wish, just scroll down and read the entire summary. And one thing we've done to avoid people becoming overwhelmed by how much information we have is we've collapsed various categories. So if you want to read more about the animal and lab evidence, you can click on this and it will expand it. So one could read the entire document, top to bottom, or you might say, I'm interested in how curcumin is used in treatment. So if you click on treatment, it will take you to its uses in treating the cancer. And we will list the effects, the anti-cancer effects, or perhaps it has effects where it improves the efficacy of the standard treatment. We will list clinical evidence first, and then we'll list lab and animal evidence for treating the cancer. Then maybe that same person says, well, I want to know more about curcumin and managing side effects or helping me to be well. So this is where they would explore that. And then if we have evidence of it to reduce risk, we will list that here. As Nancy mentioned, we are very careful to think about how accessible the therapy is. So we talk about how do you obtain this therapy. And here it's pretty simple with curcumin, but there might be things such as mistletoe that might be a little bit more difficult to obtain. And when we can provide information that would help people find that, we will do that. We also list cautions and dosing. We do not recommend therapies or doses, but we will point people to resources where they do provide doses. Sometimes the dose is, these are the doses we used in the studies, but others come from people's programs or protocols where they'll list doses, and we send them to those sources. We will list integrated programs, protocols, and medical systems that we know of that use curcumin, and where possible, we'll say what cancers they use it for or what applications they use it for. And then we provide a space for commentary, and this is commentary from our advisors or other experts in the field. So it may be a comment that expands upon the research data that we provide. If one wants to see all the references for a summary, you would just click on View All References and it'll pull that list up for you right then. Then we, for every summary, list where you can find more information about, in this case, curcumin. At the bottom of the page, we'll say what other related pages you might want to take a look at. If there are any personal stories that we have or blog posts that mention curcumin, we will put those here. And if there's any news that's come up recently about curcumin, we will put that here in the news. And finally, at the bottom of every page on BCCT, there's an opportunity to add a new comment. And this is one way you can make specific comments about a specific page or therapy. There are other ways to make comments, which we will talk about later on. So that is an example of searching for a therapy and navigating through a therapy page. Now, what about tailoring the information to your needs or the needs of your patient? Because if you just take a look at the website, it could be overwhelming if you think you have to look at everything here or search all over the place to find what you need. So we've given thought to that, and we've created a guiding document, and we've provided the links to you. Hopefully you've gotten a PDF of the slides so that the links in the PDF should be live. But when you do get to this page in your own browser, we suggest you print up a copy and you also bookmark that page, because we think this is a page you will be using quite often. So let's go through this page. Where you find it is under the sitemap and overview, which, by the way, the sitemap and overview is sort of a table of contents for BCCT. And if you scroll down to near the bottom under more information, you'll find this link that takes you to a doc with active links on navigating BCCT with patients. And what we thought about is, based on what stage someone is in the cancer path, what are the likely summaries that people would be interested in at that time? And I'll give you an example of how this applied in my practice. And it's interesting where you meet up with people, but I was in my fitness class and one of the students came up to me afterwards and said, "You're an oncology nurse, aren't you, Laura?" And I said, "Yes. What's up?" She said, "Well, I was just diagnosed with lymphoma a couple of weeks ago, and I'm supposed to meet with the oncologist in 2 days, and I have been searching and researching, and I feel like a deer in the headlights, and I need somebody to help me pull together what I need to be thinking about in this meeting with the doctor." And so I wrote down the web address for BCCT, and I said, "I suggest you go to two summaries in this document, and one is decision making under pressure. And just take a look at that, and it might help you organize yourself for this meeting and get you thinking about what's important as you make this decision or these decisions about your treatment." So I did that. And the other thing I suggested to her is that she looks at a document called Questions for Your Care Providers, and also questions to ask yourself. And I said, there is information here on questions you can ask in this appointment with your oncologist. Another thing about this document is it helps you think about pulling together your team, your conventional care team, and then hopefully what will expand into an integrative care team. So there are questions to ask when you're selecting an oncologist. If you're thinking about including a naturopathic oncologist in the team, here are some questions you could ask. If you're assembling a complementary medicine team, we have questions that you ask in finding and choosing complementary medicine practitioners, and questions you would ask them in an interview with them, so you can decide about who you want on your team. So that's and by the way, the person came back to me the next week just elated that she was able to become so focused on what she needed to prepare herself for this meeting. And she said it went very well, and she was going to tell lots of people about BCCT. So here are the many things that we think people might be interested in knowing about if they've been diagnosed with cancer. Then we have suggestions for what people might be interested in learning about if they're going to have treatment, and then post-treatment, and so forth and so on. So this could be a guide to you in helping others navigate BCCT. Now let's look at a particular cancer summary, and I'll show you how these are organized and how people may get the best use out of it. So we'll look at the breast cancer summary. And if you were to print this summary out, expand all the sections and print it out, it would be more than 40 pages long. And as a matter of fact, we do give you a link to a 40-page printer formatted version of this web page. So that tells you how much information is in here. And again, someone could scroll down and read it from top to bottom, which is fine, but then you may find people want to hone in on something specific about breast cancer. So there are all these icons at the top that are active that will take you to a section you might be interested in. So I'm going to click on Integrative Therapies here. And the first thing you'll see when you want to look at integrative therapies for any of the cancers that we have, we'll start with the 7 healing practices, because as Michael mentioned, these are the foundation for one to be well, to function better, do better through treatment. These are the foundation of your plan for creating a body that cancer just cannot thrive in. So we start with the 7 healing practices, and these are all pretty readily available to people, pretty accessible. And what we do, and I'll just take eating well as an example, we'll make some key points about it. Then we'll talk about eating well and the evidence there is for this in treating the cancer, in reducing the risk, and if there is evidence of it helping with side effects and symptom management, we would also describe that. So these are the 7 healing practices that begin the discussion about integrative cancer care. Then if someone is in the treatment phase and they want to know, well, what complementary approaches are used in treating the cancer, they can come to this section here. We'll mention applicable points about conventional breast cancer therapies. And then the first complementary approach we'll describe will be natural products. And as Nancy described, we group the evidence, safety, and access into groups of between 1 and 6. So let's take a look at group 1. So these are all the natural products which we felt fit in this category of good clinical evidence of efficacy, safety, and easy access. And when you open that up, you'll find the natural products that we put in that category or into that group. And if we have a summary for it, for instance, flaxseed lignans, and you click on this, you can find out more information about flaxseed lignans particularly. And so forth and so on. We do the same for the other groups. After we describe natural products and the evidence for those, we look at off-label, overlooked, or novel cancer approaches, or what we like to call ONCAs. You will not usually see an off-label drug in group 1 because there are access considerations in that most of them require a prescription and monitoring. So let's just look at what we have in group 2, and you'll see bisphosphonates, copper chelation, propranolol. And again, if we have a summary for that, you'll see that it's highlighted in blue, and you can click on that. After we describe the ONCAs, then we'll list other complementary approaches for treating the cancer. In this case, we list diet and metabolic therapies and these therapies using heat, cold, sound, light, or cutting-edge radiotherapy. After we discuss treatment, we talk about complementary approaches for managing side effects and promoting wellness. So like we did for treating the cancer, we start with natural products. Then we go into the off-label, overlooked, or novel cancer approaches. Then we talk about other complementary approaches for which there might be evidence. And we, as you can see, for managing side effects, there are a lot more complementary approaches than there were under treatment. So you see all of these. Under reducing risk, which Nancy mentioned, that has to do with either reducing risk of developing cancer or reducing the risk of recurrence. So we might, in this case with breast cancer, talk about what the risk factors are, and then we'll talk about ways to reduce risk. And again, we start with natural products, we look at ONCAs, and then other complementary approaches. In the breast cancer summary, we've added a section on breast cancer and surgery. And we have some information on DCIS treatment. We have a section here on taking care of your heart, cardiac toxicity in breast cancer treatment. And we include healthy lifestyle choices that may be good for the heart. And we'll also talk about natural therapies that might protect the heart during either adriamycin doxorubicin treatment or Herceptin treatment. And then, as we do in the therapy summaries, we have a section for commentary from our advisors and other experts in the field. Then we have more information. And with breast cancer, we have lots of resources. So we also list specifically resources for treatment, resources on reconstruction options and reducing risk of infection. And you see quite a robust resource list here. And of course, at the bottom of the page, we have these related pages. And then if someone wishes to make a comment about the breast cancer summary, we take those comments here. We look at all the comments. We respond to everyone who's made a comment. And then if it looks like a comment that deserves to be seen by everyone with our response to it, we will post that. So that is the breast cancer summary, but I'm not really through with it yet because I wanted to just show you that there is the summary PDF, which is in a booklet form, and someone may really love getting this and highlighting it and bringing it in maybe to their visit with their doctor. Another thing that we're really excited about with all our cancer summaries is that we're going to provide a quick reference guide to integrative therapies. So let's take this 40-page summary and summarize the top complementary approaches to include in an integrative plan. And what we have is this 2-page document. And these are the therapies and healing practices for which there is very good evidence of efficacy, of safety, and it's pretty well accessible. And this is, we think, would be really valuable for someone to take in to their physician and talk about what's here. They can bring all the other, the longer document for the physician to look at the evidence and help you with your plan. So that's our quick reference guide. Another value added is that we are creating patient ed brochures in collaboration with No Oncology. Nancy mentioned No Oncology earlier. So we're developing these patient ed brochures, and we have one on wellness during tamoxifen treatment, integrative oncology approaches. And after you have a discussion with your patient, or you've done your research for yourself, you may want to look at this brochure to summarize or give your patient a copy of this brochure to take home with them or refer them to the breast cancer page and where this is. And we're going to send you home with a brochure. So if you want to send your patients home with a brochure about BCCT, and it's a 2-page brochure, and it turns into a trifold, and it gives some basic information about BCCT, and most importantly, the web address, so when the person gets home, they can look it up for themselves. And the way you find this brochure, by the way, is on the Contact Us page. So it's there. Okay. And we would really value your feedback. It's going to help make BCCT better. So we do have a feedback page. So as I mentioned before, you can give feedback on a particular summary, or if you want to give general feedback on BCCT, this would be where you find it. Well, I see that I have a little bit more time before we get into the Q&A, so I wanted to give you an example of navigating the site with a patient. I mentioned someone earlier who had come into my fitness class, and I got her started. But here was an interesting session I had with a 57-year-old woman who was diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer in 2016. And she thought then, by the way the news was given to her, that she was not going to be alive very much longer. So she stopped her work as a lawyer and a law professor. And she began to develop night sweats, which have caused major sleep disruption. Well, now she wants to get back to work, but she thinks the sleep disruption is affecting her cognitive abilities. So she was asking, Laura, can you give me some tips on other ways I can work with these night sweats? And I work as an integrative oncology navigator for Smith Center for Healing in the Arts. So it is through that venue that she came to me. So she told me about what she was doing for her hot flashes, taking gabapentin, she was exercising. She was using a device that was new to me, the EMBR wave device. And we began to talk about hot flashes and other therapies. And I told her about the BCCT site, and she immediately pulled it up on her computer. We were talking over the phone. And I said, oh, good. So while you're there, click on hot flashes. So I told her how to get to that page, and she opened it up. And we went through it, and she was particularly interested in acupuncture. And so I said, well, click on that, and then you will see that we have a summary on acupuncture. And then I said, since the major problem with hot flashes for you is sleep disruption, why don't we look at the 7 healing practices and look at sleeping well? And so she opened that up. And then we got into a discussion of how stress affects sleep and how lack of sleep affects stress. And so she wanted to know more about the stress response. So then I sent her to the summary on stress management. Then she got interested in knowing how stress affects the tumor microenvironment, and she was really eating this up. So then I referred her to the page on the tumor microenvironment. So she was delighted, and it turned out it was a great way for me to have some written information to show to her so that she could study a little bit more. So that's an example of navigating the site when you're working with someone. Probably many of you know Dr. Rachel Naomi Remen. She's a pioneer of relationship-centered care and integrative medicine. She co-founded and is medical director of the Cancer Help Program at Commonweal. You may have read her books, My Grandfather's Blessings and Kitchen Table Wisdom. This quote from Rachel captures the essence of the work of healing, and I'll give you just a moment to read this, because this is what ultimately we hope people can work toward as they plan their integrative care. And in summary, we know that people with cancer want help navigating integrative cancer care. Those of you who are oncologists and advocates want evidence-informed and evidence-based information to share with the people you work with. So we encourage you to consider using BCCT as a trusted resource for information that'll help you wisely navigate beyond conventional cancer therapies. So we're happy to take questions from you now.
Thank you so much, Laura and Nancy and Michael. This is a fantastic resource. And we do have a couple questions that have come in. So first one is, where is the side map and overview?
Okay, you know, maybe I shouldn't stop showing my screen. Can you see my screen?
Well, we're seeing a kind of an overview of the presentation. Yeah, now we see your screen.
Can you see where my mouse is?
Where to begin?
Yes. So under where to begin, getting started, site map and overview. And that takes you to this page. And the document I had gone through earlier is called Navigating BCCT with Patients. And if the person asking the question hasn't received the PDF of the slides, please write to SIO, send them an email and say you need that PDF, and it will have an active link that will get you to the site map and overview.
Okay, great. Thank you. We have another question that says, I'm having a problem with the live page. When I click on a heading, say Integrative Cancer Care, I can see the links, but when I move my mouse down, they disappear. I've tried 2 different browsers.
Ah, you too. Nancy, I'm going to let you take this question.
Yes, unfortunately, we have no control over this. If you click on one of those headings, where to begin, integrative cancer care and such, you must move your mouse down directly into the box. If you go even one tiny fraction of an inch outside of the box that shows up below it, the box will disappear.
Yeah, I have that problem sometime. You see, it just happened. So you have to move into the box directly.
Okay.
So I have Chrome and I have the same problem.
All right, thank you. So, for example, if a person had lymphedema and they were interested in therapies, how would they start with navigating that?
Okay, so Nancy, maybe you and I can take that together. First of all, one thing we did not say, we are actually still in beta testing with BCCT, and we have a lot of summaries to come that are on our to-do list. And one of those is a specific summary on managing lymphedema. Now, if you want to go to the breast cancer summary, you could go here. And Nancy, would that show up in a search, lymphedema?
I don't think we have much on lymphedema.
Yeah, not yet.
Not yet. Unfortunately, you've found one of our weak spots, Marianne.
It came to mind since I teach yoga for breast cancer survivors. So it's just something a lot of them are dealing with and questions about.
So we selected, oh, go ahead, Nancy.
When we selected the side effects to emphasize on the site, we started with those with the strongest evidence for integrative approaches. And lymphedema does not have as strong a base of integrative approaches that are effective.
Okay.
But Marianne, for any therapy for which there is evidence it might be useful, it will show up in that therapy. So I'm pretty sure if you look at the yoga summary,
Okay.
you'll see something about it in there.
Okay. Great. Thank you. So I have a question about your categories of evidence. And if there's a therapy that's shown as being dangerous, will the person using the site be able to see that?
Yes. Yes. So those are listed on the cancer summaries. So the breast cancer, prostate cancer, ovarian cancer to date, that a therapy would show up as being potentially dangerous. And we are creating a summary of proven ineffective and dangerous therapy summaries that is not yet complete, and those will be listed. So therapies that pretty much across the board are dangerous, certainly dangerous in relation to any benefit that might be derived from them. But in the caution sections on each of the therapy summaries, we also stress anything that would be a contraindication for someone to use. So for example, if someone who has another medical condition, such as a heart condition or diabetes or asthma or something, if this would be a dangerous therapy for that person, then we mention that in the therapy summary.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
I was going to just pull up a therapy summary to show you where that is.
Milk thistle would be a good one because.
Oh, okay. I'll pull that one up. So I'm on the search therapies page, everybody. Here's milk thistle. And you can get to the cautions up here.
Okay.
So here we have some of the cautions with milk thistle. Okay.
Okay. Great.
So,
Thank you.
so this Marianne actually brings up a good point that I neglected to say, and that is we follow an insight from Donald Abrams, who's a well-respected integrative oncologist and actually a former president of SIO. And he proposes that the lower the risk of harm, the lower the burden of proof. So we look at the totality of therapies and not just what benefit they provide. It's benefit compared to risk of harm.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, we have a question asking, are you open to dialogues expanding certain areas of your site? My husband just finished intense protocols for MCL, and a huge self-education took place on medicinal mushroom extracts. We gathered a great deal of information or data on research and dosing, etc.
Absolutely. If this person who's asking the question would contact us, we have, sometimes we put information up as stories. We have a caregiver who has worked with us a lot to talk about what tips she would give for other caregivers, for instance. And so we welcome help and feedback from any person who wishes to give it to us. So please just contact us, go to the contact us section, and let's get started.
Great, thank you. And here's a question from someone who is currently finishing their doctoral degree in acupuncture and oriental medicine and specializing in oncology, looking for an observership. Do you have any recommendations?
Nancy or Michael? well, I'd be curious to know what they meant by observership. Maybe this person needs to contact us directly as well.
Okay. So a couple times you guys have mentioned best practices. Can you describe a little bit more how those are established?
What comes to mind is where we talk about the guidelines. And so under breast cancer, we have clinical practice guidelines. In this section, these particularly have to do with integrative oncology clinical practice guidelines. So we have here SIO's clinical practice guidelines for breast cancer, which many of you are familiar with. Also, they have published guidelines for lung cancer, and then one on, in general, on botanicals and complementary therapies. So this is where we have the integrative clinical practice guidelines. Also, under conventional therapies, we have, we'll list where people can find information like about the NCCN guidelines and that sort of thing. I'd have to scroll around a bit to find it for you. But we do provide guidelines from them. We'll list what ASCO has to say. Oh, and here, over here to the right, further clinical practice guidelines. I knew there were somewhere. So we will list links to those. And then we try to put links that are open access, find those when we can. Some provide login information, but not necessarily you have to pay, like the NCCN professional guidelines. You have to sign up and get a login, but you can access those guidelines.
That's great. Thank you. And there's another question. Is it possible to suggest alternative therapies? I've researched, for example, lymphedema. So I think that is what you suggested with the other question too, to contact you directly.
Yes, absolutely. We're happy to receive information. We don't have any claim that we have the whole package here, but we will be reviewing the evidence behind anything.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, I think we're at our end of time here. So I would just like to thank you all, Michael and Laura and Nancy, for this fantastic presentation and for developing this incredible resource. So I'm sure a lot of the listeners will be using it and sharing it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.